To Isabel and Alexander. The toast echoed through the reception tent, followed by a wave of applause. I smiled, lifting my champagne glass, and leaned into my new husband. His name felt foreign on my tongue, but his arm around my waist felt like safety. He was real. This was real. The fairy lights twinkled above us, the band played a soft melody, and the nightmare of my old life felt a million miles away. Martha was gone. I was Isabel now. I was safe. We moved through the crowd of our guests, accepting congratulations and warm hugs. It was a blur of happy faces and kind words. I felt a little dizzy from the champagne and the sheer joy of it all. As I turned to thank one of Alexander's cousins, a waiter in a crisp white uniform squeezed past me to get to the next table. He was so close he brushed against my arm. "You look beautiful, little bird," a low voice whispered, the words slipping directly into my ear like poison. My blood turned to ice. My smile froze on my face. That voice. That name. A name no one had called me in 5 years. A name only he had ever used. I spun around, my heart pounding in my throat. The waiter was already several feet away, his back to me. He was young, with dark hair, a boy I'd never seen before. He couldn't have been the one who spoke. It was impossible. He didn't even turn around. "Darling? Are you all right?" Alexander's hand was on my arm, his brow furrowed with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I thought someone said something. I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. My eyes were still locked on the young waiter, who was now clearing glasses on the far side of the tent, oblivious. "Probably just the wind, my love. It's picking up a little." He smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile that made me feel insane. "Come on. Our first dance is about to start." He started to lead me toward the dance floor, but my feet felt like lead. It wasn't the wind. I knew that voice better than my own. It was Henry. My sister, Vernie, met us halfway, a fresh glass of champagne in her hand. "Here," she said, pressing it into my fingers. Her own hand was trembling. "Just drink this. You need to relax." Her eyes were wide, her smile strained. I noticed a thin, red scratch across the back of her hand, fresh and angry looking. "You're shaking, Martha. I mean, Isabel. Are you okay?" The slip of the tongue was like a slap. "I'm fine," I lied, forcing the word out. The band leader was announcing our names. Everyone was turning to look at us. Trapped. I felt completely and utterly trapped. "Hey, my friend, hope you're doing well. Drop a comment and let me know how you're feeling about this story so far and where you are watching from." Some stories are too close to my heart to share on YouTube. I send those, along with little life lessons and surprises, to my email circle. If you'd like to be part of it, you can join with the link in the description. Alexander led me to the center of the floor and pulled me close. The music started, a slow, romantic ballad. I rested my head on his chest, trying to match my breathing to his, trying to feel safe. But his hand on the small of my back suddenly felt wrong. For just a second, the pressure was too hard, the grip too familiar. It felt like Henry's hand, possessive and controlling. I flinched, pulling back slightly. Alexander's face filled with confusion. "What is it?" he whispered. "Nothing. My dress, it just got caught." The lie tasted sour. I scanned the faces watching us from the edge of the dance floor, my eyes darting from one person to the next. I was looking for a ghost. I saw nothing but smiling strangers. When the dance finally ended, I mumbled an excuse about needing some air and practically ran from the tent. I headed for the private restroom attached to my bridal suite, needing a moment alone. I had to pull myself together. It was just trauma. My mind was playing tricks on me. That's all it was. I pushed open the door and flicked on the light. The room was warm and humid, the mirrors clouded with steam. Someone must have left the hot water running in the sink. I walked over and shut it off, then splashed cold water on my face. My reflection was a mess, my eyes wild with panic. As the cool water dripped down my chin, the steam on the mirror began to clear. And I saw the writing. 2 words were scrawled across the glass, written with a finger in the condensation. They were big and messy. Sing for me. My breath left my body in a single, silent scream. It was his command. What he always made me do after he hurt me. He'd make me sing a nursery rhyme to prove I wasn't crying anymore, to prove I was still his pretty, perfect little bird. The steam was fresh. The message was new. He was here. He was watching me. But that wasn't what broke me. On the marble counter, placed directly under the terrifying words, was the single white gardenia I'd worn tucked behind my ear. It had been in my hair during the first dance. I was sure of it. Someone had plucked it from my hair without me even noticing, come into this private room, and left a message from the deepest part of my hell. My legs gave out. I slid down the cool tile wall, my expensive wedding dress bunching around me like a useless cloud. My throat was tight, closed off. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. All I could hear was a faint, tinny melody playing in my head. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. The song he made me sing. The one I sang through a split lip the night he broke my arm. The one I hummed as I packed a single bag 5 years ago, my hands shaking so badly I could barely zip it shut. He was here. This wasn't a memory. This was a promise. A frantic knock echoed on the door. Isabel? Are you in there? Everyone's asking for you. It was Vernie, my sister, my rescuer. I scrambled up, my hands clumsy as I fumbled with the doorknob. I yanked it open. Vernie stood there, her face a mask of worry. What's wrong? You're as white as your dress. The mirror, I choked out, grabbing her arm and pulling her inside. Look at the mirror. I pointed a trembling finger at the glass. Vernie's eyes followed mine. She stared for a long second, her breath catching in her throat. I saw the recognition, the pure terror that flashed across her face. She knew what those words meant. She was there for the aftermath of those nights. She was the one who held the ice packs to my swollen face. Then something in her shifted. Her fear was swallowed by a strange, hard resolve. Before I could say another word, she grabbed a fluffy white towel from the rack. Bernie, no. I cried, reaching for her, but I was too slow. With 2 quick, frantic swipes, she wiped the glass clean. The words vanished. The steam was gone. My proof was erased. What are you doing? I shrieked, my voice cracking. He wrote that. He was in here. Stop it, she hissed, grabbing my shoulders. Her grip was tight, desperate. No one was in here. You're scaring yourself, Martha. You're tired. You're emotional. That's all this is. She used my old name again, not as a slip this time, but as a weapon. No, I whispered, shaking my head. The world was tilting. You saw it. I know you did. I saw steam on a mirror, she said, her voice low and firm. Your mind is playing tricks on you. Do you have any idea what's at stake here? Look at this life you have. Alexander is a good man. You can't throw this away because you think you see a ghost. She let go of me and turned to the counter, picking up the single white gardenia. She held it between her fingers, her expression unreadable. You probably dropped this when you came in. You're just worked up. The memory hit me then, sharp and brutal, brought on by the sight of her hand. Henry, his face twisted in rage, his hand clamped around my wrist, his nails digging into my skin, leaving 4 perfect crescent-shaped marks that would later turn into ugly purple bruises. I remembered him screaming that I was embarrassing him in front of his friends for not smiling enough. I remembered Vernie finding me later, crying in the closet, and gently dabbing antiseptic on the broken skin. I looked from the flower to the angry red scratch on the back of her own hand. It was a single, deep line. It looked like a nail had scraped her. My blood ran cold. Your hand, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Where did you get that scratch? Vernie flinched, pulling her hand back as if burned. She tucked it behind her back, her eyes darting away from mine. I snagged it on a rose bush near the tent. It's nothing. The lie was so obvious, so clumsy. It hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. Rose bushes don't leave single, clean scratches like that.
Finger na juzdu.
His fingernails. He grabbed you, didn't he? I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. You saw him. You talked to him. That's crazy, she snapped, her voice too high. You sound completely crazy. Henry is dead, Martha.
We made sure of that.
We read the news reports. We saw the pictures of the car. He's gone. Then who whispered in my ear? Who wrote on that mirror? I was pleading now, desperate for her to stop, to just tell me the truth. No one, she insisted. It's the trauma. It's coming back. Maybe we should have gotten you more help after. She trailed off, letting the unspoken words hang in the air. After you escaped. After we let you believe he was dead. Just then, the door opened again. It was Alexander. His warm smile faded the moment he saw my face. Isabel, darling, I was getting worried.
What's going on?
He looked from my tear-streaked face to Vernie's panicked one. Vernie immediately stepped forward, putting on a brave face. She's just overwhelmed, Alexander. It's a big day. A lot of emotions. I'm not overwhelmed, I said, my voice shaking with a rage that was quickly replacing my fear. Vernie is lying. Someone was in here. Henry, he was here. Alexander's expression softened with pity. It was the last thing I wanted to see. Sweetheart, he said, stepping toward me and putting his hands on my arms. Henry is gone. You told me yourself he died in that car accident years ago. Remember? You're safe now. You're with me. His voice was so kind, so reasonable. It made me sound like I was insane. He looked at Vernie, who gave him a small, helpless shrug, a perfect imitation of a concerned sister who didn't know how to handle her unstable sibling. She was playing a part. They were both looking at me like I was a broken thing that needed to be handled with care. She wiped it off, I said, turning to Alexander, my last hope. There was writing on the mirror. She wiped it away before you could see. Vernie let out a small, heartbroken sigh. I was just trying to calm her down. I wiped away the condensation. I didn't see any writing, I swear. Betrayal. It was a sharp, physical pain in my chest. This was the person who held my hand as we drove away from my old life in the dead of night. The one who helped me pick my new name. The only person on this entire island who knew the real me, the broken me. And she was standing here, calmly and deliberately, pushing me off a cliff. Alexander pulled me into a hug. His embrace was supposed to be comforting, but it felt like a cage. It's okay, he murmured into my hair. It's all going to be okay. Let's just get you some water. Maybe you should lie down for a bit. I pulled away from him, my body rigid. I was completely alone. No one believed me. Henry had found a way to get to me without ever laying a hand on me. He had turned my own sister, my only ally, against me. He was making my perfect new life a prison, and he was making me the crazy person rattling the bars. As Vernie and Alexander began talking in low, worried tones about what to do with me, my eyes scanned the bathroom one last time. My gaze fell on the small, silver trash can next to the sink. Tucked inside, peeking out from under a tissue, was a small, smoldering object. It wasn't a cigarette. It was dark and hand-rolled. My stomach dropped. A clove cigarette. Henry's brand. The brand I hadn't smelled in 5 years. The one he always smoked after he was done hurting me, the sweet, sickening scent filling the room as I sang him my little song. Vernie saw me looking. Her eyes widened in panic, and she took a half step toward the bin, as if to block my view. It was all the confirmation I needed. He was here. And my sister knew. My gaze locked on the clove cigarette, and the world seemed to shrink to that tiny, damning piece of evidence. I didn't need to touch it. I didn't need to smell it. I knew. A cold certainty washed over me, pushing the panic down and replacing it with something hard and sharp. Vernie saw the shift in my eyes. Her face went pale. She took a step, a clumsy, aborted movement to block my view, but it was too late.
Don't, I said.
My voice was quiet, but it cut through the air, stopping both her and Alexander. Don't you dare touch it. I walked past them, my movements stiff and deliberate. I knelt down, ignoring the way my silk dress pooled on the floor. I reached into the silver bin and plucked out the cigarette butt. It was still warm. I held it up between my thumb and forefinger, a foul offering in the pristine white room. "This," I said, looking straight at Verney, "is Henry's." Alexander stepped forward, his expression a painful mix of confusion and concern. "Isabel, what are you talking about? That could be anyone's." "No," I said, shaking my head slowly. I couldn't look away from my sister. It couldn't be. Not here. On a private island where the staff is forbidden from smoking anywhere near the guests. Where the only people here are your closest friends and family, none of whom smoke hand-rolled clove cigarettes. I finally turned to Alexander, my voice pleading. He smoked these constantly. The smell filled our whole apartment. It was the smell of him being satisfied after he hurt me. Verney let out a choked sob.
"She's not well."
"Alexander, please, she's just having some kind of episode. The stress. Stop talking about me like I'm not in the room." I snapped, my voice finally rising. "You're lying. He was here. He touched you, didn't he? That scratch on your hand, he gave it to you when he grabbed you." I took a step toward her. "Did he threaten you, Verney? Is that it? Did he tell you he would hurt you if you told me he was here?" Her eyes filled with a terror so profound it looked like she was staring into her own grave. She just shook her head, unable to speak, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't a denial. It was absolute, paralyzing fear. Alexander looked from my face, rigid with furious certainty, to my sister's, which was crumbling into pieces. He was a man who solved problems for a living, a man who commanded boardrooms and navigated complex deals. And this was a problem he couldn't understand. He ran a hand through his hair, his kind face tight with strain. "Okay," he said, his voice taking on a new tone. It wasn't soft or pitying anymore. It was decisive. "Okay, let's figure this out." He looked at me. "You are 100% certain that this is from him?" "I am more certain of this than I am of my own name," I whispered. He nodded, a sharp, quick gesture. He turned to Verney. "And you are 100% certain you didn't see anyone?" Verney just wept, nodding her head frantically, a puppet on a string. Her performance was good, but her terror was better. It was too real. I felt a surge of despair. He was going to believe her. He was going to choose the simple explanation that his new wife was broken over the impossible one. He would call a doctor, have me sedated, and this perfect new life would become a beautiful hospital where I was the only patient. But Alexander didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with an intense focus, his eyes searching mine. "The man you told me about," he said, his voice low. "The man from your past. You told me he was clever, that he liked games. He lives for them." I confirmed, my throat tight. "He likes to make people feel crazy. It's his favorite thing. And your sister," he continued, never taking his eyes off me, "is the only person in the world who knows every detail of what he did to you. The only one who could help him create this performance." The accusation hung in the air, unspoken but heavy. He wasn't saying Verney was a willing partner. He was saying she was a perfect tool. My heart broke for her, even through my own anger and betrayal. She was just as much his victim as I was. "What do we do?" Asked, the question of fragile thread of hope. It was we. He had said we. "First, no one leaves this room," he commanded, already pulling his phone from his pocket. He wasn't talking to me anymore, but to an invisible staff. He pressed a button. "Javier, this is Alexander. I want a complete lockdown. No one on or off the island.
No votes, no exceptions.
Shut it down.
Now."
He ended the call and looked at Verney, who had frozen, her tears stopping mid-fall. "I'm sorry, Verney, but I have to ask you to stay here. My head of security will be outside the door. He won't let anyone in or out." "You can't do this," she shrieked. "You're treating me like a prisoner. A man who is supposed to be dead is on my island, threatening my wife," Alexander said, his voice like steel. "Right now, everyone is a prisoner until I know she is safe." He took the cigarette butt from my fingers, handling it carefully. We'll have this checked for DNA, but that takes time. Until then, we work with what we know." He looked back at me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of strength. He believed me, or at least he was willing to act as if he did. That was enough. "Tell me everything. Every detail. From the moment you walked out onto that balcony before the ceremony. Don't leave anything out." As I started to talk, a thought crystallized in my mind, cold and sharp. Henry wasn't just here to torture me. He was here on my wedding day. My wedding to a man with immense wealth and power. This wasn't just a psychological game anymore. The stakes had been raised. He didn't want my mind. He wanted my life. This life. The one he felt I had stolen from him. "Alexander." I interrupted myself, my blood running cold. "It's not just me he's after. It's you. It's all of this." His jaw tightened. He understood immediately. This wasn't a ghost from my past coming to haunt me. This was an enemy combatant, here to burn my new world to the ground. And we were all trapped on this beautiful, isolated island with him. The party music drifted in from outside, a sick, cheerful sound from a world that no longer existed. My wedding reception had become a hunting ground, and I was no longer the only prey. The heavy wooden door clicked shut, and the sound of the key turning in the lock was deafening. My sister was gone, escorted by a silent man in a dark suit to the adjoining guest room. She didn't look at me as she left. Alexander stood beside me, his hand a warm, steady presence on my lower back. He hadn't let go of me since he made the call. Outside, the cheerful music had been replaced by a low, confused murmur from the guests, then silence. The party was over. A man named Javier, the head of Alexander's security, entered our suite. He was built like a stone wall, his face calm and professional, but his eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of the room. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "We have a lockdown, sir," he said to Alexander. "No one on or off. The perimeter is secure." "Good," Alexander said. He held up the small plastic bag containing the cigarette butt. "I want this sent to the mainland lab first thing in the morning. For now, I want a full sweep. Check every staff room, every supply closet, every inch of this place. We're looking for a ghost." Javier nodded, his gaze flicking back to me for a fraction of a second. I could feel his doubt. It was a cold weight in the air. I was the hysterical bride, the unstable element in this perfect, orderly world. To him, I was the problem to be managed, not the person to be protected. I wrapped my arms around myself, the silk of my wedding dress suddenly feeling thin and cold. I watched as Javier spoke into a device on his wrist, his voice a low, efficient murmur. Men moved silently in the hallway outside. This island, my beautiful sanctuary, was being turned inside out because of a monster only I seemed to see. An hour felt like a lifetime. Alexander had a tray of food brought to the suite, but I couldn't eat. I just stood by the large window, looking out at the dark ocean. The waves crashed against the shore, a relentless, lonely sound. He came and stood behind me, not touching me, just offering his presence. "My past is a disease," I whispered, staring at my faint reflection in the glass. "I thought I was cured, but I just infected you with it." "This isn't an infection, Isabel," he said softly. "It's an invasion, and invaders are dealt with. We will deal with him." His voice was so certain, so calm. He made it sound simple, like a business problem that could be solved with enough resources and the right strategy. But Henry wasn't a business problem. He was a poison that seeped into your bones and made you doubt the very ground beneath your feet. Javier knocked and entered before we could answer. He had a look on his face I didn't like. It was a look of satisfaction, of a problem neatly solved. "We found him," Javier announced. "Well, we found your smoker." My stomach tightened into a knot. "What do you mean?" "One of the temporary kitchen staff," Javier explained, looking at Alexander. "A young guy hired just for the event. We found him trying to hide in the laundry room. He has a whole pouch of hand-rolled clove cigarettes on him. He admitted he was sneaking them on his breaks. He's scared witless, thinks he's going to be fired. Matches the description of the waiter you saw. more or less. A wave of dizziness washed over me. A simple explanation. A neat little box to put all my terror inside. The waiter wasn't Henry. He was just a kid breaking the rules. The cigarette butt in the trash wasn't a threat.
It was just garbage.
The writing on the mirror was just steam, my mind filling in the blanks with my worst fears. It was all falling into place, a story that made perfect sense to everyone but me. I looked at Alexander, my heart pounding. Was this it? Was he going to look at me with pity now? And the voice. Alexander asked, his tone level. The writing on the mirror? Stress can do strange things, sir, Javier said carefully. It's been a long, emotional day. There it was. The gentle dismissal. The suggestion that I was fragile, broken, and unreliable. I saw Alexander consider it. I saw the logic of it appeal to him, the way it would smooth everything over and let the world return to normal. He could have his perfect wedding night. He could have his perfect, unbroken wife. All he had to do was stop believing me. But then he turned his back on Javier and faced me fully. He took both of my hands in his. His grip was firm, grounding me. No, he said, his eyes locked on mine. The man you described to me, he wouldn't be so sloppy. A kitchen boy is too easy. This is a diversion. He wanted us to find this kid. He's throwing dust in our eyes while he moves in the shadows. Tears I didn't know I was holding back burned my eyes.
He still believed me.
He chose my chaotic, terrifying truth over his security chief's clean, simple lie. What do we do now? I asked, my voice thick. We think like he does, Alexander said. He's using what he knows about you. And the only other person here who knows those things is Vernie. He looked toward the wall that separated our suite from my sister's room. He didn't just scratch her. He gave her something. Or she took something from him. There was a trade. The idea was horrifying. My own sister, my rescuer, making a deal with the devil.
We have to talk to her, I said. No, Alexander countered.
She's too scared to tell us the truth. We need proof. He looked at me, his expression serious. I need you to think. Is there anything he might have? Something of yours? Something he would use to prove to you that he's real. My mind went blank with panic. I had burned everything from my old life. Photos, letters, clothes. I wanted nothing left of Martha Elston. Nothing for him to hold on to. And then I remembered. A small, stupid thing. A secret I had shared only with Vernie. A bird, I whispered. He used to carve things. Little animals out of scraps of wood. He once carved a tiny bird, no bigger than my thumb. He gave it to me after a bad night. He told me it was my cage. And he was the only one with the key. I shuddered at the memory. I threw it in a box with some other things I couldn't stand to look at but couldn't bring myself to destroy. When Vernie helped me pack my escape bag, she took that box.
She said she'd get rid of it for me.
I never saw it again. Alexander's face hardened. Javier, he called out. I want you to open the adjoining room. We're going to search it. Sir, Javier started to object. Your sister-in-law is a possible witness who is too frightened to talk. Alexander cut him off. We're not accusing her of anything. We're looking for evidence that could save her life and my wife's. Javier gave a stiff nod and went to the door. I felt a sick twist of guilt in my stomach. I was about to betray the only family I had left. But the fear was stronger. We walked into Vernie's room. It was pristine, her things neatly arranged. Her evening bag, a small, beaded clutch, sat on the nightstand. My eyes went straight to it. Check the bag, I said, my voice barely audible. Alexander picked it up. It felt like the world stopped moving as he opened the clasp and turned it upside down over the smooth, white bedspread. A lipstick rolled out, along with a room key and a folded handkerchief. And then, a small, dark object landed softly on the comforter. It was a bird, carved from a dark wood, its wings half spread as if caught between flying and falling. It was tiny, rough, and horrifyingly familiar. I would have known it anywhere. I reached out a trembling hand and picked it up. The wood was smooth and worn, as if it had been held and rubbed for years. It was the cage he had carved for me. And it was here, in my sister's purse, on my wedding night. The breath left my body in a ragged gasp. This wasn't just a threat anymore. It was a message. Henry wasn't just on the island. He had an accomplice. He had my sister, and I had led her right to him. My perfect new life hadn't been a fortress. It had been the bait in a trap. And Vernie, my poor, terrified sister, was caught in it right beside me. The small wooden bird felt heavier than stone in my palm. My breath came in short, ragged bursts. The air in the room was thick and silent, broken only by the sound of Vernie sobbing in the room next door, a muffled, hopeless sound. I was shaking, a deep tremor that started in my bones and radiated outward. Betrayal was a cold, sharp thing, twisting in my gut. My sister, my only family. Alexander's arms came around me from behind, pulling me back against his strong chest. He was my anchor in a world that was spinning apart. "I've got you," he murmured into my hair, his voice a low, steady rumble. "I've got you, Isabel. It's him or us. And we are not going to lose." He gently took the wooden bird from my hand and placed it on the nightstand as if it were a bomb. He turned me to face him, his hands cupping my face, his thumbs stroking my cheeks. His eyes, full of a fierce, protective light, searched mine. "I will not let him touch you. I will not let him hurt you. I will tear this island apart. I will tear the world apart to keep you safe. Do you believe me?" Passion and desperation surged through me, a powerful wave that pushed back the fear. I wrapped my arms around his neck and pulled his mouth to mine. The kiss was not gentle. It was raw and needy, a desperate affirmation that he was real, that this safety was real. It was a promise against the darkness. When we finally broke apart, I rested my forehead against his, breathing in his scent, the clean, expensive smell of my new life. "I believe you," I whispered, and in that moment, I had never been more sure of anything. He was my husband, my protector, my fortress. He kept one arm around my waist, holding me close as he picked up the bird again. He turned it over and over in his fingers, his brow furrowed in thought. "He's arrogant," Alexander said, more to himself than to me. "Leaving something like this.
He wants to be seen.
He wants credit for his work." He looked at the carving, a strange intensity in his eyes. "This is well made. The detail is incredible for something so small. What kind of wood is it? Did he ever tell you?" The question was innocent, a simple detail in the middle of chaos. But it sent a jolt through my memory. I remembered that night clearly. The coppery taste of blood in my mouth, the dull ache in my ribs where he had pushed me against the corner of the table. He had come to me later, when I was curled up on the sofa, and pressed this little bird into my hand. He told me it was a special kind of wood, I said, my voice quiet. A kind that was very hard to carve. He said most people wouldn't even try, that their tools would just break. My throat felt tight as the words came out. He said he did it to prove a point. To prove that if he wanted something, nothing could stop him from shaping it exactly how he wanted. That his will was stronger than anything. I waited for Alexander to say something comforting, to tell me how sick Henry was, to reassure me that that part of my life was over. But he was silent. He just stood there, staring at the bird in his hand. A slow, strange smile touched his lips. It was a smile I had never seen before, and it turned my blood to ice. It was a smile of private understanding, of shared knowledge. He finally looked at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. "That's funny," he said, his voice smooth as glass. He told me the same thing. The world stopped. The sound of the ocean outside, the hum of the air conditioning, my own heartbeat, it all went silent. My mind refused to understand the words. They were just sounds, meaningless and wrong. "What?" I whispered. "What did you say?" "He's a fascinating man, your Henry," Alexander continued, his voice calm, conversational. He might have been talking about a business partner. Very intense. He was right about the wood. It's almost impossible to work with. A real test of patience. My mind scrambled, trying to find its footing on ground that was crumbling away. You know him?" I stammered. "You've met Henry?" Met him. Alexander laughed. A soft, low sound that did not belong in this nightmare. Isabel, my love. I've known him for years. How do you think I found you? Everything tilted. The floor fell away, and I was falling through the last 5 years of my life. Our first meeting. I had been working in a small bookstore in a city hundreds of miles from my old life. He had come in a handsome, charming man asking for a rare book. He said he had been looking for it everywhere. He'd seemed so surprised and happy when I found it for him. He asked me to coffee to say thank you. It had all felt like a fairy tale. An accident.
Fate.
It was a lie. All of it. He hadn't been looking for a book. He had been looking for me. The bookstore, I choked out. That wasn't an accident. Henry knew you loved old books, Alexander said simply. He walked over to the bar in the corner of the suite and poured himself a drink, his movements unhurried and precise. It was the most logical place to start. The man who had held me just minutes ago, promising to protect me, was a stranger. No, he was worse than a stranger. He was a monster wearing the face of my savior. The trust one had placed in him, the love I felt for him, it all turned to poison in my veins. He wasn't my fortress. He was just a bigger, more beautiful cage. My escape had been a lie. I hadn't run from Henry. I had been handed over. Why? I demanded, my voice shaking with a rage so deep it scared me. Why would you do this? This whole time, you were lying to me. He took a slow sip of his drink, watching me over the rim of the glass. The pity was gone from his eyes. The love was gone. All that was left was a chilling look of ownership. Henry and I have a competitive relationship, he explained. We enjoy a challenge. And he made a bet. He bet that even if he gave you everything you ever wanted, a new life, wealth, a man who adored you, that you would still be his. That deep down, you would always belong to him. He bet he could walk right into your perfect new world and take you back, or at least break your mind trying. He took another sip. I bet he couldn't, he said. I bet that my love, my protection, would be strong enough to erase him completely. That you would choose this life. That you would choose me. The pieces clicked into place, each one a fresh wave of agony. The lockdown, his quick belief. He knew Henry was coming. He had been waiting for him. This wasn't an invasion.
It was a scheduled event.
A game. My life, my sanity, my love, it was all just points on a scoreboard for two sick, powerful men. Verney wasn't just a victim coerced by Henry. She was a pawn moved into place by both of them. You're a monster, I whispered, backing away from him until my legs hit the bed. He set his glass down and walked toward me, his steps slow and deliberate. He was no longer my gentle, loving husband. He was a predator, and I had willingly walked into his trap. He sat on the bed beside me, and I flinched away, but he was too fast. His hand shot out, grabbing my chin, forcing me to look at him. His grip was not brutal, but it was unbreakable. It was a grip that knew control. The game is not over yet, he said, his voice a low command. He's made his move. Now we make ours. You are going to be strong. You are going to be loyal. You are going to prove him wrong. You are going to prove that you are mine now. I looked into the eyes of the man I had married just hours ago and saw nothing but the cold, hard bars of a prison. I was completely alone. My sister had betrayed me. My husband was my enemy. Every person on this island was his employee, loyal only to him. I had nowhere to run. He leaned in closer, his lips almost touching my ear. The warmth of his breath was a terrifying intimacy. He whispered the last two words, the ones that finally shattered what was left of my heart, the ones that proved I had never escaped at all. Little bird. His words hung in the air, a final, perfect chain clicking into place around my soul. Little bird. The name was an echo from a past I thought I had buried, now spoken by the man I thought was my future. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was a declaration. A brand. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth as a choked gasp escaped. The room, my beautiful bridal suite, a symbol of my new life, suddenly felt like the inside of a coffin. The scent of gardenias was gone, replaced by the smell of something old and rotten, the smell of my own fear. "No," I whispered, the word a useless puff of air. "You can't be." Alexander watched me, his expression unchanged. There was no apology in his eyes, no regret. There was only a calm, chilling certainty. "I can be whatever I choose to be," he said, "just as I chose you. I saw the potential in you, Isabel. The strength. Henry saw it too, but he tried to break it. I decided to nurture it, to build it up, to make you into the perfect prize." He gestured around the luxurious room, at the silk sheets on the bed, the champagne chilling in a silver bucket, my discarded wedding veil. "All of this," he said, his voice a soft poison, "is my creation. This life, your happiness, your safety. I gave it all to you. I invested in you. Henry thinks he can just walk in and smash my investment to pieces. He thinks that one whisper, one ghost from the past, will be enough to make you crumble. He thinks you will crawl back to the cage you know." My legs were shaking so badly, I had to grab the edge of the heavy wooden dresser to stay upright. My knuckles were white. "This is a game to you," I said, my voice trembling with a fury that was the only thing holding me together. "My life is a game." "Everything is a game," he corrected me gently. "Business, politics, love. It's all about winning. And I don't like to lose." He walked toward me, and every instinct screamed at me to run, but my feet were bolted to the floor. I was trapped. I had always been trapped. He stopped just in front of me, so close I could feel the heat coming off his body. "Here is the part of the game we are in now. Henry is on this island. I know where he is. My men are watching him. He cannot get to you unless I allow it." He let that sink in. The lockdown wasn't to keep Henry out. It was to keep him in. It was a chessboard, and we were all pieces. "He has your sister," Alexander continued, his voice dropping lower. "Not in a violent way. Not yet.
He has her loyalty.
He has her terror. He has convinced her that I am the real monster, and he is her only way out. He promised to get her off this island if she helped him drive you mad tonight. A simple task for him." I thought of the scratch on Vernie's hand, the look of pure terror on her face. She wasn't his partner. She was his hostage. Just like me. "What do you want from me?" I finally asked, the words tasting like ash. "I want you to win the game for me," he said, his eyes boring into mine. "Tomorrow morning, we will have breakfast on the terrace. All of us. You, me, Vernie, and Henry. You will sit there, beside me, and you will be the perfect, loving wife. You will be unshakable. You will treat Henry like a distant stranger you barely remember. You will look at him with pity, not fear. You will show him, and you will show me, that you are no longer his little bird. You are my queen. You will break his mind." The demand was insane.
Impossible.
He wanted me to face my abuser, the man who haunted my every waking moment, and pretend he was nothing. "And if I don't?" I challenged, my voice barely a whisper. Alexander's face hardened, the mask of civility slipping for just a second. "If you don't," he said, his voice cold and flat, "then I will let Henry have your sister. My men will step aside. I will tell them that Vernie wishes to leave the island with an old friend. What happens to her after that is between the two of them. I'm sure Henry has missed having an Elston girl to play with." A wave of nausea washed over me. The choice was a blade held to my throat. My own sanity, or my sister's life. My sister who had betrayed me, yes, but who had done it because she was just as trapped as I was. He was asking me to sacrifice her, or sacrifice the last piece of myself that wasn't broken. He must have seen the agony on my face, because he reached out and tucked a stray piece of hair behind my ear. The gesture was so tender, so familiar, that it felt like a slap. "This is not a punishment, Isabel," he said softly. "This is a gift. This is your chance to finally face him and be free. To destroy him with your strength. I am giving you the power. All you have to do is use it." He left me then, closing the door to the suite with a quiet click. I was alone. The silence was a roaring in my ears. I stumbled to the window and looked out at the black water. An island. A beautiful, perfect prison. For a moment, a wild thought flashed through my mind. I could just end it. The fall from the balcony was a long one. It would be quick. It would be an escape. But then I saw Vernie's face in my mind, terrified and crying. He would give her to Henry. My escape would be her death sentence. There was no way out. Not for either of us. I stood there for what felt like hours, watching the tide come in. A strange calm settled over me. It wasn't peace. It was the calm of a person who has accepted their own doom. The fear and the rage burned away, leaving behind something cold and hard and empty. Hope was a luxury I could no longer afford. I turned from the window and walked into the bathroom. I looked at my reflection. My makeup was ruined. My eyes were red and swollen. I was a wreck. I was Martha. But he didn't want Martha. He wanted Isabel, the strong, perfect prize he had created. Slowly, methodically, I began to fix myself. I washed my face with cold water. I reapplied my makeup, covering the dark circles, painting on a mask of serenity. I took my hair down from its elegant twist and brushed it out until it fell in smooth, perfect waves over my shoulders. I took off the heavy, expensive wedding dress and let it fall to the floor in a heap of forgotten promises. I put on a simple, white silk robe that felt like armor. When I was done, a stranger stared back at me from the mirror. Her eyes were empty. Her smile was a perfect, painted line. She was beautiful and poised and completely hollow. She was exactly what he wanted. I was ready to play. I would sit at that table. I would look my monster in the eye and feel nothing. I would destroy him to save my sister. I would become a monster myself to survive. I would be his queen. And in the hollowed-out space where my heart used to be, I made a new vow. I would win his sick game. And then I would find a way to burn his entire kingdom to the ground. The morning sun was a brilliant, blinding white. It streamed across the terrace, making the silverware on the breakfast table glitter like weapons. The tablecloth was a perfect, starched sheet of white. The ocean was a calm, impossible blue. Everything was beautiful, and everything was a lie. I walked toward the table, the silk of my robe cool against my skin. My feet were bare, my steps silent on the warm stone. I felt nothing. The hollow space inside me had been swept clean of fear. There was only a cold, quiet purpose. Alexander was already there, sitting at the head of the table. He was reading a newspaper, a cup of coffee steaming beside him. He looked up as I approached, and a genuine smile lit his face. It was the smile of a man looking at his most prized possession. "Good morning, my love," he said, his voice warm. "You look rested." "I am," I said. My own voice sounded strange to me, smooth and distant. I sat in the chair he indicated, the one directly to his right. A servant I didn't recognize immediately appeared and poured me a glass of orange juice. A few minutes later, Vernie was brought out. She wasn't escorted by a guard, but the man walking a few steps behind her might as well have been. Her face was puffy and pale, her eyes red-rimmed and empty. She wore the same dress from the night before, now wrinkled and stained. She looked broken. She wouldn't look at me. She sank into a chair on the other side of the table, her hands clutching each other in her lap. My heart ached for her, a dull, phantom pain from a life that was already over. I pushed the feeling down, deep into the cold, hollow space. I could not afford to feel. Then he arrived. Henry walked onto the terrace like he owned it. He was dressed in a simple linen shirt and dark pants, looking like just another wealthy guest. He hadn't aged a day. His tan skin was smooth, his dark hair was perfectly styled, and the same cruel, knowing smirk played on his lips. His eyes found mine immediately. They were dark and possessive, and for a single, terrifying second, I felt the old fear rise up in my throat like bile. I felt the urge to shrink, to make myself small, to disappear. But I didn't. I held his gaze. I felt Alexander's eyes on me, watching, judging. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my orange juice. I looked at Henry, the man who had shattered my life, and I gave him a small, polite, and completely empty smile. The kind of smile you give a stranger you pass on the street. His smirk faltered for just a fraction of a second. It was a victory so small no one else would have noticed it, but it was enough. It was fuel. "Henry," Alexander said, his voice booming with false friendship. "So glad you could make it. Please sit. Join us." Henry sat down directly across from me. The table felt impossibly small. He leaned forward, placing his elbows on the table, his eyes still locked on me. "You look well, Martha," he said, his voice a low purr. He used my old name, the first stone cast. I didn't flinch. I turned to Alexander, placing my hand on his arm, a picture of a loving wife. "Darling," I said, my voice light and sweet. "Do you know this man? He seems to have me confused with someone else. My name is Isabel." Alexander's hand covered mine. His skin was warm. I could feel his approval. "This is Henry Washington," he said, "an old competitor of mine. I believe he knew your family a long time ago." "Oh," I said, turning back to Henry. I gave him a look of faint, bored recognition. "I see. I'm afraid I don't remember. I had a rather difficult life before I met Alexander. I've tried my best to forget most of it." I looked at him, my head tilted slightly. "It's kinder that way, don't you think? To let the dead stay dead." Henry's smile was gone now. His eyes were hard. He had expected tears. He had expected me to shatter. This cold, untouchable woman was not the girl he had broken. He looked over at Vernie, who was staring at her plate, trembling. "And you, Vernie?" Henry asked, his voice sharp. "Do you remember me?" Vernie flinched, a small, wounded animal. She looked from Henry to Alexander, then finally to me. Her eyes were pleading. "Asterisk, help me, Martha. Please, asterisk." This was it. The choice. The blade to my throat. I looked at my sister, my poor, broken sister who had tried to save me once, and was now caught in a trap of my own making. I saw the scratch on her hand, a red line of loyalty to a man who would destroy her. Love conquered fear. My love for her was the only real thing left inside me, and I had to use it like a weapon. I had to hurt her to save her. I let out a small, tired sigh. I looked at Alexander, my expression one of annoyance. "Alexander, darling, must we? I appreciate that you want to be polite to your guest, but my sister is clearly unwell. The stress of the wedding was too much for her. She's been emotional, unreliable, saying the most confusing things." I turned my gaze on Vernie, and I made my eyes as cold as a winter sky. "I think perhaps it's best if she goes back to her room to rest." The hope in Vernie's eyes died. It was replaced by a look of utter, soul-crushing betrayal. A single tear rolled down her cheek and splashed onto her plate. She understood. I was casting her out. I was choosing him. I was choosing this life over her. It was the cruelest thing I had ever done. It was the only way to make her useless to them. If they thought I didn't care about her, they couldn't use her against me. "An excellent idea," Alexander said, nodding. He signaled the man standing behind her. "Please, see my sister-in-law back to her suite. Make sure she has everything she needs." Vernie didn't protest. She just stood up, her movement stiff, and walked away without a backward glance. My sacrifice. My victory. It tasted like poison. Now it was just the three of us. The two monsters and their creation. Henry watched me, his expression a mask of fury and confusion. I had taken his favorite toy away. I had broken the rules of his game. "You've changed," he said, the words a low growl. "My husband has given me a better life," I said simply. I picked up a silver knife and began to butter a piece of toast with slow, steady hands. "A life where I don't have to sing for my supper." The words hit him like a physical blow. It was his most private command, the thing he used to prove his power over me. And I had just thrown it on the breakfast table like a piece of trash. "That bird I carved for you," he snarled. "Did you forget that too? The one I made with my own two hands." "The bird?" I paused, pretending to think. "Oh, that little thing. I remember now. It was a bit rough, wasn't it?" I looked at Alexander, my eyes full of adoration. "My husband buys me jewelry. Diamonds. Have you ever tried to shape a diamond, Henry?" Now that takes real will. That takes real power. I saw something in him break. His ego. His pride. He had come here to find his broken little bird, still huddled in her cage. Instead, he found a queen on her throne, looking down on him. He had nothing.
No le verí.
No power. I had taken it all away from him. He stood up so abruptly his chair scraped loudly against the stone. He glared at Alexander. You win, he spat.
She's yours.
She's just as cold and empty as you are. He turned and stalked away without another word. I watched him go, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt no fear of him. There was only a vast, aching emptiness. I had won. I had faced my monster, and I had not flinched. I had saved my sister, but I had lost myself. Alexander chuckled beside me, a low, satisfied sound. He lifted his coffee cup in a toast. To us, he said. I knew you had it in you. You were magnificent. I turned to look at my husband, my owner. The game wasn't over. This was just the first move. He thought he had won me. He thought he had shaped me into his perfect queen. He had no idea what he had truly created. He had taken Martha, the victim, and Isabel, the fairy tale, and he had forged them in fire into something new. Something hard and sharp and patient. Something that knew how to smile while plotting a murder. I smiled back at him, a true smile this time. A smile that didn't reach my cold, empty eyes. To us, I agreed, and I picked at my toast. I was finally ready to eat. The toast was dry in my mouth, but I chewed it slowly, deliberately. I swallowed. Alexander watched me, his eyes gleaming with pride. He saw a project completed, a wild thing tamed and perfected. He saw his own reflection in my cold eyes and called it loyalty. When the meal was finished, he dabbed his mouth with a linen napkin and stood up, extending a hand to me. I took it. His skin was warm and smooth. It felt like a snake's. Walk with me, he said. We walked toward the edge of the terrace, overlooking the manicured gardens that sloped down to the private beach. Henry is being escorted to his boat. He understands the terms of our arrangement. He won't be bothering you again. He squeezed my hand. You see? All it took was a little strength. You just had to choose. And Vernie? I asked, my voice carefully neutral. I kept my eyes on a boat being prepared at the distant dock.
Henry's escape.
She will be sent home on the next transport, he said dismissively. She served her purpose. She showed you the weakness you needed to cut away. He mistook my silence for agreement. Perhaps it's best you don't see her again. A clean break from the past. From everything that was Martha's. I stopped walking and turned to face him. I let go of his hand. No, I said, my voice soft but firm. I need to see her. I need to be the one to tell her she has to go. It's the only way to be sure she understands. It's the only way to make the break clean. He studied my face, searching for any sign of weakness, of lingering attachment. I gave him nothing but cold resolve. I was his queen after all. A queen makes the hard decisions. A queen cuts the ties that bind her to a lesser life. He smiled, a slow, approving curve of his lips. Of course, he said. You're right. Handle it. I'll wait for you in the library. We have a lifetime to plan. I turned and walked back toward the suites, my every step measured and calm. But inside, my heart was a drum beating out a rhythm of war. I didn't knock on Vernie's door. I used the key Alexander had given me and let myself in. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her back to me, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The sight of her, so broken, almost shattered my composure. I closed the door, the soft click echoing in the room.
He's gone, I said.
Vernie flinched and scrambled to her feet, spinning to face me. Her face was a mess of tears and betrayal. How could you, she whispered, her voice raw. Martha, how could you do that? I thought you were saving me. I was, I said, and I walked toward her. I didn't stop until I was standing right in front of her. I reached out and gently touched the angry red scratch on the back of her hand. Did it work? Her eyes widened in confusion. Did what work? The signal. I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. 1 scratch for the game is on. 2 scratches for abort, he knows. You only had 1 scratch on your hand last night, Vernie. The game was on. I just had to wait for you to make your move. The confusion on her face melted away, replaced by a slow dawning, brilliant light. A real smile, the first I had seen in what felt like a lifetime, spread across her face. She threw her arms around me, burying her face in my shoulder, and this time, her sobs were not of sorrow, but of a relief so profound it shook her entire body. You saw it, she cried into my robe. I was so scared you wouldn't see it. I was so scared he had finally broken you. I held her tight, my own tears finally falling, hot and real. Never, I whispered. He can't break what we built together. We pulled apart, and she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, the hand with the scratch. He never touched me, she said, her voice full of steel. I did this to myself with my room key right after he cornered me, just like we planned. He thought he was so clever, whispering threats to me, telling me he had a man on the inside. She laughed, a sharp, triumphant sound. He didn't know I had a woman on the inside. This was our secret, the one that had kept me alive for 5 years. The escape wasn't just an escape. It was the beginning of an attack. We knew about Alexander. We had found his name in Henry's private papers, a partner in sick games and dirtier business. We knew he liked to collect broken things and rebuild them in his own image. So I became the perfect broken thing. Vernie fed him clues to my location, little breadcrumbs that led him to the bookstore, making him think he was a brilliant hunter finding his prey. We let him save me. We let him build me this beautiful cage, because we knew it was the only way to get close enough to find the key to his entire rotten kingdom. Vernie reached under the bed and pulled out a thin, flat laptop. He thought my tears were weakness, she said, opening it. He and Alexander, they're the same. They see a woman crying and their brains turn off. They get arrogant. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. While Alexander's men were watching me, thinking I was a prisoner, they let me have this, to pass the time. They never thought to check the secure network I built. For the last 12 hours, while Henry was playing his little ghost story, I've been downloading everything. Every file, every secret account, every name. Her face was illuminated by the blue light of the screen. It's worse than we thought, Martha, she said, her voice grim. It's not just games. It's girls, young ones, disappeared from homes, from schools. They trade them, these rich men. They call them investments. Just like he called you. The cold hollow inside me caught fire. It was a righteous, cleansing flame. This was never just about me. It was about all of them. All the other little birds trapped in cages we couldn't see. Is it done? I asked, my voice shaking with the force of my rage. It was sent 30 minutes ago, Vernie said, a fierce, beautiful smile on her face. To every major news outlet in the world. And to a few special prosecutors who have been trying to build a case against Alexander's friends for years. This is the key. The whole organization is coming down. Just then, the door to the suite flew open. Javier stood there, his professional calm gone, his face pale with shock. Behind him, 2 other security men stood, their hands hovering near their sides. What is going on? Javier demanded, his eyes wide as he looked at the laptop, at our faces. Alexander appeared behind him, his own face a mask of confusion. Isabel? What is this? I didn't answer him. I just looked past him, out the open door, toward the sky. And then I heard it. A sound that didn't belong on this perfect, silent island. The low, rhythmic thumping of helicopter blades, growing closer and closer. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of justice. The sound of freedom. Alexander heard it too. The blood drained from his face as the truth, the whole impossible truth, finally dawned on him. He looked from the helicopter sound to Javier's panicked face, to the laptop in Vernie's hands, and then, finally, to me. The look in his eyes was something I would cherish for the rest of my life. It was the look of a king realizing his castle was made of sand. You, he breathed, the word a ragged whisper of disbelief. I smiled at him, a real smile, a smile that reached my eyes and filled every part of me. The game is over, Alexander, I said, and you were never even a player. I walked past him, Vernie at my side. We didn't run. We walked out onto the terrace, into the brilliant morning sun, lifting our faces to the sound of the approaching helicopters. The island was no longer a prison. It was a crime scene. And we were the star witnesses. We were the survivors. We were free. The roar of the helicopters was a storm that washed the island clean. Men in dark uniforms with bold yellow letters on their backs moved with a purpose that felt like fate. They swarmed the terrace, their voices sharp and clear, cutting through the perfect morning. Alexander didn't resist. He simply stood there, watching me, as they put his hands behind his back. The fight was gone from him, replaced by a cold, quiet appraisal. He looked at me not as his wife, not as his prize, but as the architect of his ruin. As they led him past me, he paused. His eyes, the same eyes that had looked at me with such fake adoration, were now filled with a strange, chilling respect. Well played, Martha, he said, and the name, my real name, coming from his lips was the most honest thing he had ever said to me. He was no longer speaking to Isabel, his creation. He was speaking to the woman who had torn his world down. I just watched him go, feeling nothing but the empty space where a great weight used to be. Henry was a different story.
He fought.
He screamed my name, curses and promises mixed together in a final, pathetic display of rage. 2 agents had to drag him, his expensive linen shirt tearing at the shoulder. He was trying to get to me, to leave one last mark, one final bruise on my soul. But I wasn't afraid. I stood beside my sister, and for the first time, I looked at Henry Washington and saw him for what he was, a small, loud man who was terrified of losing control. His power was an act, a costume he wore, and it had just been ripped away. His eyes met mine one last time, looking for the fear he fed on.
He found nothing.
I was a mirror reflecting his own failure back at him. Then he was gone, his voice fading as they pulled him toward the waiting helicopter, just another piece of trash being taken away. When the noise finally died down, the silence left behind was deeper and more real than any I had ever known. A kind woman from a victim support unit gave Vernie and me soft blankets, and we sat on the stone steps of the terrace, watching the sun climb higher in the sky. The island, my gilded cage, was now just a beautiful piece of land, its power broken. Isabella's gone, I said softly, looking out at the calm blue water. I don't know who I am without her. Isabel had been my armor, a bright, shiny character I played. She was happy and light and knew nothing of pain. Letting her go felt like a death, even if it was the price of freedom. Vernie took my hand, her fingers lacing through mine. Her grip was strong, real. You were never Isabel, she said, her voice firm. You were always Martha. You were Martha when you packed that bag 5 years ago. You were Martha when you planned every step of this. Isabel was the cage, not the escape. Now you just get to be Martha again, and we'll figure out who she is together.
Her words were a lifeline.
We sat there for a long time, 2 sisters against the world, as the last of the helicopters lifted off, carrying the monsters away and leaving us with a quiet promise of a new day. 6 months later, the air smelled of salt and pine, not expensive gardenias. We didn't live on an island anymore. We had a small house with a little porch that looked out over a rocky coastline in a state I'd never been to before. The beach was public, and in the mornings, we'd watch dog walkers and early morning joggers pass by. No guards, no gates, just ordinary life. It was more beautiful than any private paradise. We had used the money from a federal victims fund and the beginnings of a massive settlement to build this quiet life, a true sanctuary. One morning, I was sitting on the porch steps, a warm mug of coffee in my hands, watching the waves. Vernie came out and sat beside me, handing me a plain white envelope that had arrived in the mail. My heart didn't pound with fear. I wasn't afraid of letters anymore. I opened it. Inside was a simple card. On the front was a hand-drawn picture of a bird, not in a cage, but flying free against a bright yellow sun. I opened it. The message was short, written in the clumsy handwriting of a teenager. My name is Anna. I was one of them.
Thank you.
Now I get to go home. Below, it was a list of 5 other names. More girls. Girls we had saved. Girls who now had a chance to become women. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness or fear. They were tears of a deep, aching joy. This was the reason. This was the purpose that had been hiding beneath all the pain. It wasn't just about my freedom. It was about theirs. We should start a foundation, Vernie said softly, reading the card over my shoulder. Use the rest of the money to help them. To find the others. I looked at her, my sister, my partner, my hero. Her eyes were bright with the same fire I felt burning in my own chest. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. I thought of the toast at my wedding, a celebration of a lie. I lifted my coffee mug. To Anna, I said. Vernie lifted hers. And to all the others, she added. We touched our mugs together, the simple clink of ceramic a more powerful vow than any I had ever made. The future wasn't a fairy tale with a billionaire. It was something far more real and far more valuable. It was work to be done. It was a life I was choosing every single day. The sun warmed my face, and for the first time since I was a little girl, I felt completely and utterly safe. I was not Isabel, the prize. I was not Martha, the victim. I was Martha, the woman who had walked through hell and had come back to burn it all down. What did this story teach you about the real meaning of freedom? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world.